Football Outsiders Draft live stream. I'm Mick Tanier along with Derrik Klassen, and we're going to be talking draft every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Eastern time, all through draft season, all the way into April to the draft and probably the week after the draft as well. Maybe into June and July. Who knows? We can just keep this going. How you doing, Derrik?
Not too bad. I mean, I'm excited to get the show rolling. That's all I can say.
How was your combine experience?
Very good. I made the, young person mistake of staying all the way till Sunday when like everybody else leaves on, Friday night or Saturday. So,
Yes.
I have some lesson to take back with me for next year, but overall it was awesome, talking to people, players and everybody else that was there. It was just a fantastic experience.
It was great. It was great being back in Indianapolis. The weather was wonderful. But I did what you did a few years back, and you wound up eating steak and shake in a hotel room by yourself watching workouts. Was that your experience?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. But live and learn. You'll have a gray beard someday, and you'll know to get out of there Friday evening, Friday afternoon. So all the Football Outsiders NFL draft coverage, including this live stream, is presented by Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code FO40, that's FO40, the digits, at Underdog to double your deposit up to $100. Keep your eyes peeled for the new best ball tournaments that include 2022 rookies and their new Superflex games. And that way you can deploy your knowledge from mine and Derrik Klassen's NFL draft research and analysis at Football Outsiders. Links to Underdog Fantasy can be found in the description of this video below. So go play with us on Underdog today. How was that draft read, Derrik?
You know what? I think that's as good as it gets.
Yes. Anyway, happy Aaron Rodgers gets paid day, Derrik.
The saga is over.
Yes. Almost too soon. I had like 3 months of material planned for this. So I don't know how to proceed. How are you celebrating?
I mean, I guess I have the NFC North, I think, for next year's chapter. So I think the fact that it's done a little bit early kind of is going to help me out a little bit. I'm glad it's not going to be dragged out for the next couple of months. And then I have 8 billion things I'm trying to sort out for this story by the time it comes chapter time. So I guess fine. Thank you for Aaron Rodgers for getting it knocked out.
Right. You don't want to be for the Football Outsiders Almanac in like June hearing Aaron Rodgers trade rumors still.
Exactly. I would like it to be fully done by the time I have my chapter, first draft done, and we're here. So we're good.
Right. I'm in a not quite as the same boat because I have the Denver Broncos as one of the teams I'm covering. And had this lingered, it would have been like, okay, I might have to scrap the entire thing we wrote because once he comes in, that changes everything. And from our standpoint, I mean, we're going to be talking about Aaron Rodgers, obviously, for the rest of our lives. From our standpoint in the draft, it does impact draft decisions a little bit. And I think that starts with the Denver Broncos, a team that thought they might have a chance of getting Rodgers.
I mean, I think Denver's, pretty clearly the biggest one. I think it might have been Rappaport or something had even tweeted that the other team that was clearly in the mix for Rodgers before signing this new deal was Denver. And I don't think he mentioned any other team. So I think that's pretty significant and probably has to feel pretty bad for Denver because I think they're sitting at 9th and you're not going to find me saying that there's a guy worth taking at 9 at quarterback position. And I think they messed up last year not taking Fields. So they're not in the best position.
Yeah. Did you hear George Payton or Hackett? I don't think you were in town yet when they spoke.
No, I wasn't.
Payton was very much, they asked him, what are the strengths of this draft? And he's like, edge rusher and receiver and left tackle and right tackle and cornerback. And then they ask, well, what are your strengths of your roster? It's like, well, the skill positions, the playmakers, and the offensive line. And it's like, well, if I'm hearing this correctly, you don't have a quarterback, and there isn't a quarterback back in this draft that you have any interest in taking.
Exactly. I mean, chances are they're probably going to end up swinging on one, but good luck finding one that's better than Justin Fields is basically the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, they're not going to find anybody better than Justin Fields. And you start to wonder, I mean, look at these guys. I'm not sure if there's anybody that's that much better than Drew Lock in this class.
I mean, that's probably true. And even for as bad as Drew Lock has looked, like, I don't know. Not a lot of these other guys are getting me very excited.
A lot of them, Drew Lock starts being my comp after a while. I mean, not necessarily, precisely, but in terms of the quality level of the prospect. And it's like, here's a kid. If we take his highlight reel, then we have a heck of a kid. But if we look at his actual film, it's a little bit of a different story.
I mean, especially Matt Corral. I mean, he seems to have kind of fallen out of favor for some people, but
Yes.
Matt Corral basically looks like if you had just taken Drew Lock and put him in the Lane Kiffin offense, and it looks like a 1-for-1.
That's perfect. That is absolutely perfect. And I think that's one of the comps I had for Corral. Although I think I took Corral and comped him to every quarterback that like you're not really comfortable with as a starter in the NFL.
Right.
Including the one we're going to talk about in a minute. We're gonna officially kick things off here with our combine winners and losers. Again, we were both there. It's a tradition to always do combine winners and losers. I'm not a big fan of combine losers, but we managed to each pick a guy. But let's start with our combine winners. I'll pass it off to you first, Derrik. You had an intriguing choice.
Yeah, I picked Wyoming linebacker Chad Muma. His 40 was like pretty good. 4.63 was not fantastic, but I think for his size, it was like perfectly fine, and that's not going to be a concern. Everything else was incredible. I think he led bench press for linebackers. He absolutely jumped out of the gym with all of his jumps. His agility stuff was still really good. I think like top 4 or 5 at the position. So he was a guy who is converted from safety and is playing linebacker now. And I think you see all the athletic ability on film. The fact that he was able to pretty much confirm it out at the combine was pretty impressive. And honestly, bench press, I think, is the one that's always tricky to take something from. But I think for linebackers, you can pretty clearly see where that might show up when you're taking on a block and trying to shock, shed, and all that sort of stuff. With Muma, it's very clear that like his issues with doing that are just like a reps and technique thing. He moved from safety, so he's just hasn't been doing that as much as other guys. But when you put up 27 on the bench press, it's like, okay, you're clearly strong enough to do this. Let's just get you a year or two of coaching, get you a little bit more comfortable at linebacker, and you're going to be good to go. So I already really liked him coming in, and I think the fact that he tested as one of the best linebackers there was really, really good sign for me.
You talked to me in the past about you tend to be skeptical of these pumped up safety type linebackers that we see a lot nowadays. And so did Muma overcome your skepticism or put it aside or what?
So it's not necessarily that I hate safeties playing linebacker. It's just that when they do it, a lot of the time they're a lot more like hesitant to play in the box, to run up and take on blocks and all that sort of stuff, and really navigate through traffic. They just aren't good at it because they're just not used to it. They're used to playing 10 yards off instead of 4.5.
Right.
With Muma, you didn't really see that being an issue. Sometimes, like I said, his technique taking on blocks could be weird because he just isn't as comfortable with it. But he was very willing to come downhill, play fast, hit people, play tight to his blocks and stuff. So like he really plays like he's a linebacker. And I think if I hadn't looked through his his school sheet and it said that he played safety, I wouldn't have known that he played safety with the way that he plays the run. I think it's really impressive.
He's not one of those guys who's always sort of out on the slot position in space and then races in the blitz and gets the sack. And we're like, oh my God, what an athlete. It's not that kind of tape.
No, it's not like a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah thing. It's not like that where you're like, can he play linebacker? It's more like, oh, he's definitely playing linebacker. That's not going to be an issue.
Divine Darling was the guy, and I know he's still on a roster somewhere, but it's like, look at all the positions he can play. It's like, I think that's just a really big safety. He's not that fast. I think that Tanner Muse was another guy like that. I think what you got is just a really big, fast guy who doesn't necessarily do some of these things all that well. I looked at this tape a little bit. I did not get a chance to really break down Chad Muma, but one thing I did notice, you talk about his vertical jumps. I believe he had a blocked kick or two in college.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a really, really good athlete, and he's like 6'3" too. Like, he's a big dude. I mean, I don't know, like size, he's got it. Athletic tools, he's got it. The tape is there. For me, he's one of the best linebackers in the class.
Right, and he probably can put on a little more weight there. If you can do 27 on the bench at your 239, that means you can get up a little bit there and get to that size where you can play sort of a modern version of the Mike linebacker.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, my winner, I was going to go with Zion Johnson of Boston College, the left tackle turned guard turned center, because he's blown up the process from the Senior Bowl into the draft. It was a great interview. There were a couple other guys like that. But my winner, and he's even a winner today, we can roll with him now, is Mitch Trubisky. Because Mitch Trubisky keeps on winning and winning and winning. So what happened at the combine to make Mitch Trubisky win? Well, first of all the quarterbacks, they are what they are, who are the actual rookies. None of them stood out in any way, throwing, drilling, interviewing even. The Colts stuck Carson Wentz in a sack and threw him into the river and drove away. I mean, that's more or less what happened there. Chris Ballard basically said, we don't want him anymore, and we don't want on our conscience you taking him from us. That's more or less what they said. Jimmy Garoppolo had surgery. Okay. And what happened today? Aaron Rodgers signed with the Packers. So every time you think that there's a quarterback in the tier of, hey, Broncos, hey, Panthers, hey, Commanders, here's your guy, they completely disappear. So who keeps making more and more and more money from this? Mitch Trubisky. You were out, Derek. It's just sitting around in prime or sitting around in high velocity. Trubisky's the name on everybody's lips.
I mean, I think it seemed like it. Like, the one rookie that seemed like he was getting a lot of buzz was Malik Willis. But after that, like a lot of the other guys didn't seem like they were really moving up anymore. No. The other quarterback hot name was, Mitch Trubisky. I think every team, I think Washington was a big one that seemed to be particularly in on Trubisky for whatever that is worth. And like, I don't know. I get it when you think none of these quarterbacks are either, going to be good enough right away as rookies, or the juice is not going to be worth the squeeze with as incomplete as some of these guys are. Even though Mitch Trubisky is not very good, you're probably getting a top 32 quarterback. And I get why some teams are going to be like, you know what, let's eat the stopgap and just see what our team looks like with a guy like this.
Yeah, and he is a top 32, but I start to wonder.
But he's closer to 32.
Couldn't Heineke also possibly be a 30 through 30, 28 through 32 at a fraction of the price?
That's why the Washington one is particularly weird, because like the difference between Heineke and Trubisky is not going to be, $10-15 million. It's not like they're pretty negligible difference in quarterback play. So I think the fact that they're so in on him is really weird. I don't know what they're seeing where they think Mitch Trubisky puts them over the hill.
Do you ever have a friend who continually dates the same type of person and is always like disappointed at the end and angry at the end, and it's like maybe it's you,
right? Like you what you're looking for at this point, right? Like
right. And what you're looking for doesn't satisfy you, so maybe you're looking in a different direction. That friend who dates poorly is Washington and Denver. That's who that friend is at this point. So let's switch over to the losers. And you, of course, had a very interesting, intriguing choice for your big loser as well.
Yeah, I picked Arkansas edge Trey Williams. If you watch him on tape, he has some really, really good juice. He does some interesting stuff with his hands. Like, he has pretty decent size, but then at the combine, he just did not do anything well. I mean, I think his shuttle was actually okay, but like all of his jumps were not good. His 3-cone was pretty whatever. His 40 was horrendous. I mean, 508 at 253 is, I would imagine, size adjusted, that was one of the worst overall times there. Like it just was not a really good day for him. And for a guy that was, kind of banking on being this like athletic, you kind of develop him in day 3. The fact that he didn't show up and be athletic at all, I think that's pretty concerning. I think especially when you couple that with the fact that I think he has some off-field stuff. I think he got a DUI recently. Like his entire draft profile is kind of blowing up from like borderline top 100 guy to like, is he even going to get drafted type of deal.
Yeah, and when you mean a DUI, this was the young man who was passed out in the drive-thru.
Right. Yes.
Allegedly, as we say in Letterkenny, allegedly passed out in the drive-thru of a McDonald's, I believe it was. I don't want to get the fast food restaurant wrong. So, that's a pretty significant step up from, obviously it's a huge mistake no matter what. That's pretty DUI. And there were some other things in his past as well. So, you're right. With a guy like that, and it's like, okay, we may have a risk. We're doing triple checks on his character background. You don't want to see a 5.08 second 40-yard dash on top of that.
Right, because then why take the chance at that point? Like, at least, if you might get some super freak athlete or whatever, then okay. But at this point, he probably one of the worst athletes in the class, at least with the way that he tested. Like I said, I think his film is better, but still, like it to show up this bad, pretty disappointing.
And so many edges tested phenomenally, or at least rock solidly.
Yep.
All through Friday and Saturday.
Exactly. I think that's the other big kicker is a lot of the edge guys looked incredible, and he just showed up about as flat as possible.
Right. So he's the type of guy I could see saying, okay, he's probably off some draft boards at this point. We're not going to deal with all of the possible off-field and this athletic profile. My loser, and I hated picking losers here, so I kind of grabbed a guy that was just generally disappointing overall. That'd be Clemson wide receiver Justyn Ross. This is a guy who did not work out. Somebody who was a couple of years ago coming into like his freshman year was a phenomenon as a freshman. And he was out there on that Clemson receiving core with T. Higgins, and I believe Hunter Renfrow was still there at that point. And it was Trevor Lawrence or the guy before Trevor Lawrence. And Ross looked like the guy, the 5-star recruit coming out. And this guy's going to be like DeAndre Hopkins when he rises up through it. And little by little, it just never happened. Now, a lot of things happened to the Clemson program along the way, including Trevor Lawrence leaves and is replaced by somebody who is not Trevor Lawrence. But Ross needs to kind of do something in this draft class, and he's one of the bigger receivers. He's one of those guys you could say, "Ooh, a slot guy who's 6'4". We can do the whole Debo hook thing around him." He doesn't really look like that on film anymore. He doesn't work out. He barely interviews. He come out for our media interviews and was there for about a minute or two. There was not a lot of buzz around him. He didn't give any answers to give you a suggestion. Okay, well, this is a guy we need to talk about, whatever. And then he just disappeared. And that was it for his combine. And this all happens, in a place where, Treylon Burks was not phenomenal, but he gave a great interview and he worked out okay. And all these other guys like Wendell Robinson and Bo Melton and all these other slot weapon type players go out and they blow up on a week where Justyn Ross isn't even out there.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest thing. Like, it's not like he showed up and was just horrible, but the fact that he didn't test and, with a guy whose profile is already so weird because of all the injury stuff, he had the serious neck injury, I think at like the end of his freshman year or going into his sophomore year.
Yeah.
You didn't really used to have a bad neck, which I think is kind of the problem here. And so with a guy like him, you would have at least liked to have seen the upside of what his athletic testing looked like. The fact that he didn't do anything, I think it just sucks for him, especially with how fast every other receiver looked. I think, I think that's kind of an issue.
And that's it. I didn't mention Calvin Austin, who had a really great performance. Kevin Austin had a pretty solid performance there as a guy coming back from an injury for Notre Dame. The Watson kid from North Dakota State ran lights out at 6'4", and you have Justyn Ross. Now, I believe Ross may be participating in Clemson's pro day. Maybe that'll be a chance to rise up, but it was just not a great week for him. All right, now it's time to get really confrontational here. A segment called PvP. Not player versus player, but prospect versus prospect. And every week we're going to take two guys. Maybe they're teammates. Maybe they play the same position. Maybe they have similar names like Calvin and Kevin Austin. Maybe we'll do that just to confuse ourselves. But Derrik wrote recently on some of the Ohio State wide receivers. You wrote on Wilson, correct?
Yep.
And this week's PvP, we're going straight to two guys who really blew it up at the combine. And that's Ohio State wide receivers. I am vamping because I cannot remember. Is it Garrett or Jarrett?
Garrett.
It's Garrett Wilson versus Chris Olave. Somebody said Jarrett once, and it
just ruined your brain.
It ruined my brain, so he's Jarrett half the time I say it. Ladies and gentlemen, Ohio State wide receivers Garrett Wilson versus Chris Olave. And I'm going to throw it to Derrik, and I'm going to ask you, first of all, of these two college teammates, who do you prefer and why?
I prefer Olave. So as a quarterback, this is kind of part of my reasoning. As a quarterback guy, I really, really, really like receivers who simply are reliable and get open. That's what Olave is. I think his route running is fantastic. The way, he's able to tempo his routes. I think he gets off the line fairly well. He's not like elite at getting off press, but I think he does a pretty good job. He's so efficient getting in and out of his breaks. There's no wasted steps. He comes out of them pretty explosive. I think he just does a really good job consistently getting open. Whenever there's scramble drills, he does an incredible job, finding the quarterback and being friendly, making himself available, all that sort of stuff. His hands are mostly pretty good. He can go up and, fight against contact and stuff like that. And then he ran exceptionally well. I think his official was like a 4.39, yes. Originally a 4.26, which would have been pretty incredible. But 4.39 is still really good. And he has that deep speed to, take the top off pretty consistently. So to me, he's kind of just a guy who does a little bit of everything and reminds me of a slightly lesser Devonta Smith or something like that.
Right. A slightly bigger guy, but he's
right. He's a little bit bigger, but the same general skill set. Yeah.
Right. I do love the speed on him. I do love the lift the lid speed there. You saw enough of him against press, because I saw so little of him against press, and that was kind of a little bit of a concern for me.
It doesn't happen very often, but
right.
maybe part of my issue was that in comparison to Garrett Wilson, I mean, if you press Garrett Wilson, reps over. He's going to get bullied into the sideline, and that's that. With at least with Olave, I think when they did press him, he showed some instances of being able to, give himself a little bit of space, kind of like bait punches in so that he could evade him and stuff like that. Whereas like with Wilson, I just didn't really see any of that.
Right. Now, I think we have some disagreements about Wilson, the route runner. And you talked about it at Football Outsiders, Derrik Klassen's film room. You can see it. It's backways because it's about 2 weeks ago, but you can find it. But you said something on Twitter about Wilson's release or his route running. What did you refer to it as?
I called him a TikTok route runner.
Like a TikTok dancer.
Like a TikTok dancer when he's route running. It's what it looks like.
Right. And I think what you're saying is there's a lot of, fancy like maneuvering.
Yes. There's a lot of, I think, flair that doesn't need to be there. Is basically the way that I would put it.
Well,
which I think, I will say, I think it's especially apparent when you watch Olave, because Olave's is like there's zero fat in his route running.
Mm-hmm.
Wilson's is like there's a lot more to it. So I think especially when you're comparing it to Olave, I think to me it was like pretty evident.
I like it, and I get what you're saying about it, but when you have all of that flair, so to speak, it is easier to condense that and get the athleticism than it is if somebody has like a very just flat neutral release, like they're used to never getting jammed, et cetera, et cetera. It's just get down the field. It's hard to like teach some of that tap dancing Fred Astaire stuff. Whereas Wilson has all of the Fred Astaire and all the Gene Kelly and all of the, I don't know any other dancers, so I'm just going to stop there. And it's more a matter of simmer down. We don't need that. Now, but you wrote about this. What kind of issues does it cause when Wilson gets a little too fancy like with his moves?
So I think part of it is sometimes you will see it at the line of scrimmage. So like when he gets pressed and he gets, if you get hands on him, he's done. But part of the problem is like he doesn't really know how to come off the line of scrimmage. So he'll just like sit there and pitter patter his feet all the time, or like, give these like extra moves to try to get off the line of scrimmage. But by the time he does that, he's just taking too much time and he can't get into his route. So I think it kind of starts there, and that's part of my issue with him. The other issues that I would have is like when he's getting into his break, a lot of the times it takes him a couple of extra steps to really settle down, and his balance can get weird. So he won't actually be able to explode out of his break the way that he's trying to. And then you also see that sometimes where he'll like run into certain breaks. He does this a lot on digs and posts where he'll take like one really long exaggerated step to like try to get the corner out one way, and then he'll come back the other. And like he has the athleticism to do it now, but I worry that NFL cornerbacks are going to, not bite on that stuff as consistently and just simply have the athletic ability to keep up with him, because, when he does that, he's not, I think, getting all of the athleticism that he has and like maximizing it. I think he's like stunting himself.
I see those, and I do say, yeah, the body's over here, and then he cuts back. But one of them, for every time he gets jammed, there's a lot of times where it's tight coverage, and I see him winning position with those releases in the first couple of steps, and just kind of getting the inside on a slant and things like that. I think that like those things are going to be a net positive in the long run. And again, some of the things you talk about, they're clear. They look to me like day 2, day 3 of rookie camp. The coach says, no, I want you lined up like this. And again, it's like, well, you got to correct stuff. Yeah, it's correctable because he is such an athlete and he has so many things that you're kind of sanding stuff down as opposed to saying, we have to teach you like an entirely new thing. And that's why, I had to talk myself out of saying it's Michael Thomas again with Wilson. So
I do agree that like all of it is fixable, and he's like definitely athletic enough that if it does get fixed, he's going to be a problem. Like I said, I think for me, it's just a lot of like preference stuff. Like I want, if I'm a quarterback guy and I want these guys to come in and be able to play right away.
Right.
The way that that's why, I loved like a guy like Devonta Smith, because you knew he was just going to come in. He was just going to be open all the time. With Wilson, I think it could take some time. And so honestly, to that end, it might just depend on like what team you are. If you need a guy to play right away, Olave, I think, is the answer.
Right.
If you're in a position where you're not going to win anyway, you can take your time. Wilson could potentially, I think, give you something better.
My worry with Olave is he comes in right away, but as your designated deep threat.
Mm.
and you're some team that's starting out and you need an, like a team like the Giants, for example, they're not taking a receiver first, in the first round, but like, you're getting sacked while he's trying to get open deep, and you don't have somebody who can do that other stuff. But I know what you're saying. I was watching, not to get off track of these guys, I was watching Sky Moore some more of Western Michigan, and if you want to see economical release and then route, and you really see it on the dig and the post. Where there's no, it's like the whole body just turns and goes, and like there's no wasted motion. He doesn't lose a step, etc. And you can see it with that young man, and you see him getting open for like 12, 15-yard receptions. With Wilson, it's more like, like here comes the dipsy doodle, and he gets open because he's
right. He does something wrong, but he's so explosive a lot of the time that it's just like, I guess that'll fly.
Right. And my worry about Olave is he's not running the dig or the post. He's just going up the field, up the seam, open, because he's faster than everybody and there's nobody to cover him. So, So you're going to stick with Olave.
I'm still sticking with Olave. Yep.
I'm sticking with Wilson, but with whichever order, are they wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 in this draft class?
I have not seen everyone, but I will say I have seen enough of Drake London from USC and Jameson Williams from Alabama that I think I like both of those guys better than Olave and Wilson, actually. London, I think we're probably going to disagree on him too, but I think he is just like, to move the way that he does at his size is really, really rare to me. So I think I'm going to be in on him a lot. He might be my wide receiver 1. And then Jameson Williams, I actually just wrote about him during Combine Week on Football Outsiders.
Yes.
To me, he is probably like, I don't know if him or Olave is a better route runner, but Jameson Williams is doing it with like legit 4.2 speed.
Yes.
And that I think unlocks him to like, I think he can get open in any type of route, and he's going to be a really, really good player.
But he's a guy we'll probably have to wait on, might be a red shirt for much of his freshman year.
Yeah. Because of the ACL thing. Yeah.
Right. And London, he's a very strong route runner for his size as well, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Like he's, I think that's kind of the thing that, a lot of people are getting caught up on with London. When you look at, 6'5", I think he came in at like 219. When you look at 6'5", 219, you're like, oh, that's probably not a route runner, which is like a fair assumption because most of those guys aren't. They're just ball winners. London is actually a very clean route runner for his size, and I think gets in and out of those stuff a lot cleaner than a guy who's 6'5" should be able to. And then, when he gets the ball in his hand, I think he's a really good, run after catch guy, not like breakaway speed, but just almost like the Michael Crabtree. Like he just has this incredible feel for how to navigate with the ball. I think that's kind of what it feels like to me.
All right. We'll have to wait. I guess he's going to run at his USC Pro Day. Williams won't be running, obviously. He's in recovery, but we'll check in. So it might be London. You mentioned Williams as your other possibility. I'm going to go on a limb and say both of these guys are going to go over the damaged goods at this point.
Yeah. I think like Williams, I think could fall. Like Olave and Wilson, I think are going to go really high. Like Wilson might be the first receiver off the board, truthfully. Like I think even if I don't agree that he should be, I think he's probably going to be the guy that goes first.
Right. Now, Mike Kurtz asks, are either of these two making it past the Browns? I guess my question is, are either of these two making it to the Browns? Would have to be the first question, right?
That I think is the question. I think Wilson, there's no way. Like I think Wilson is going to go pretty high. Olave is a little bit trickier. I think the way that he ran actually solidified the fact that he might get up into that top 20 range, but I think it's more likely that Olave could fall and be there. Wilson, good luck. Like it's, anything could happen, but like I don't think that's happening.
and I just realized I lose track of this. The Browns are at 13.
Olave, even then, like I think Wilson is probably gone before then.
Right, Wilson is gone, but Olave is there, and if London goes ahead of both of them, I think Wilson is still gone, and maybe London is the guy who's there. So I think the Browns, if they go the receiver route, which we all assume they're doing, somebody good will be there, and it might be Chris Olave. He could play the hypothetical OBJ role.
Yeah.
In their theoretical downfield passing game.
We'll see if Baker can finally get a connection over the middle of the field, but who knows?
Right, and now they'll have to replace Landry as well. It's fine. The Browns will get a receiver, Mike. It's going to be okay. All right, I lost track of my my notes here. What are we doing? Oh, Giants, right? Okay. Smooth sailing here at the Football Outsiders. Very first ever Football Outsiders draft live stream. Coming at you like a professional host that I am. And our next segment is we're going to be saving a team every week. And this week we're going to be trying to save the New York Giants. You signed up for this, Derrik. You are now Joe Sheen. And you have to try to draft, and so will I. We will both try to draft for the New York Giants. And why do we pick the Giants? Of course, they've got 2 picks high in the first round, 2 picks in the top 10. They've also got an extra day 3 pick. Is that correct? They have
I think so. Yeah.
Yes. Well, we already have that. There we go. And they have needs. And I tried not to say the needs are everything, because I know some of the people were asking about the Giants' needs, and it's everything. They need everything. Well, what they need is offensive line, and more offensive line. And then I just kind of scattered some other needs in there. They need edge rush. They've not really had a marquee edge rusher in a while. And I think it's safe to say they need tight end. Of course, while we were there, by the way, Derrik, they cut Kyle Rudolph.
Right.
No surprise. They also cut Devontae Booker at running back. And we're trying really hard to make Saquon trade rumors a thing. But nobody's trading for Saquon Barkley. So this is a team. Well, you know what? Let's get to the. By the way, Patrick Sealy asked some questions. These guys are B prospects, no Jamar Chase level wide receiver, right? I would say these guys are A prospects, but Chase was
like S tier. Yeah, I think that's the difference. It's like Chase was a step above, but like these other guys are really, really good, and I think B is like too harsh. I think they're like A plus even, and Chase just happened to be a tick above that.
Yeah, Chase was like. If I start saying generational prospect a lot, I want you to find me and run me over with a bus. But Chase was built different. He was S tier, et cetera, et cetera. These are really good receivers. Overall, Derrik, this is a strong receiver class, right?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. And you can, we say this every year with receivers, but like you can get any kind of guy that you want, which I think, even at the top of the draft, which I think is particularly important because, London, Williams, Olave, and even Wilson are really completely different players. Like you're asking them to do entirely different things. And I think that's really exciting for anybody who needs a receiver at the top.
Right. And those are kind of the wide receiver ones. And then if you're really looking for like the slot guy, there's 80 of them.
Yes.
And we're not just saying that because it's like everybody's got slots on the brains because of these teams. They're all really good. And there's different flavors. There's big ones, small ones, great route runners, super nifty, shifty ones who played running back a little bit, ones who played wildcat quarterback. They're out there. There's a lot of them.
Exactly. I mean, like I said, you can get whatever you need in this class.
Right. Mike Kurt says it seems closer to the 2020 draft where there were a ton of wide receiver ones. 2020 was like that. I think 18 was like that. I think, 2021, I mean, you had Jamar Chase. You had some good guys in that one, too. It's been Peter King. I was talking to him. We were at a shindig, and he's like, there's an F ton of them. And there's going to be an F ton of them every year because that's the way college football is nowadays.
There are too many good receivers. I can't remember who it was, but somebody I was talking to was like, there are 12 top 5 receivers in the NFL. Like, there's just too many good players going into the NFL at the position, and it keeps happening.
Right. So getting back to state of the team, and this is a segment where we're going to try to fix an NFL team through the draft, and Derrik and I are going to play general manager, and we're going to be playing general manager, heaven help us, for the New York Giants. So Derrik will channel his inner Joe Sheen. I will channel my inner Dave Gettleman, which I do a little too easily, and it's scary. And what we did is we went with 3-round mock drafts for the Giants. Went for 3 rounds so it doesn't get really ridiculous at the end where we're just trying to explain who the 7th round pick and showing off our awesome football knowledge. And I'm going to start with Derrik. You went out there and tried to fix the Giants' offensive line, or did you?
I tried my best. So at 5, I took Ikem Ekwonu. Personally, like, it doesn't matter to me which tackle is there or which one they take. They should just take one.
Yes.
I think Andrew Thomas actually came on last year and has been a lot better than he was early in his rookie year. But like, they still need a guy on the other side. And like, truthfully, Ekwonu could probably kick inside to guard if that's what they want to do anyway. Like, right. I think a guy like Ekwonu, they kind of had a lot of options. So you just take whichever guy is there and figure it out because they need help very badly.
Okay. I liked Ekwonu a lot. I wrote about him in my walkthrough. And, I have to be careful because when a guy starts talking about song and dance routines and all this goofy stuff, I get excited by him. I was excited by his film before I was excited about him as a individual. And I mean, I really loved what I said. He's somebody who I think could step in at left tackle. And like you said, could move in inside as well.
Exactly. I mean, with him, it's just the power on film is crazy. Like when he gets hands on you, the rep is over and he's going to do whatever he wants. I think he can get a little bit wild. His hands are kind
Yes.
of all over the place. He can lean, but like physically, you're not getting better than that. Like that's a franchise left tackle when you just look at him coming off the bus or whatever.
Yeah, it's like Hulk smash type stuff.
Yes, yes.
And there are a couple of guys that you can say that about, which is going back to your point. Grab one of them, grab Neal, grab Cross, grab him, because it's Hulk smash puny human time.
Exactly.
Right. And we don't, I think when we're talking about the Giants, we don't want to get into the trap of, well, the only guy on the line who's good is Thomas. So you don't need a left tackle. So let's like try to fill in the other things. I feel like that's counterproductive for the Giants.
Yeah, like just take a guy and figure it out. It'll work itself out.
Yes. Oh, briefly, Mike Kurtz just invoked Jalen Rieger on the chat. We will not be discussing Jalen Rieger at any time over the next 7 weeks. This is a Jalen Rieger free live stream from this point forward. Okay. Tell me more about George Karlaftis. I got to speak to him a little bit in India. I was impressed by him. What's he bring to the table for the Giants?
I love George Karlaftis. Like this is, I think, my guy in this entire draft class.
Yeah.
For me, he measured in at almost like 270, and like when you watch him on film, just the way that he comes off the ball for his size, a guy like that is just insane. And I think he has like his inside moves are incredible. If he wants to just bull rush you, he can. He does a really good job of just like getting under guys and driving consistently.
Yeah.
What really impresses me most about him is, he doesn't have that true, like, Von Miller, Robert Quinn type bend, but for a guy that is 270, he does a fantastic job of like manipulating his body and contorting it in weird ways where he can still, not take a ton of contact and then just like fight through you. I think he does an outrageous job of that. I compared him to Ryan Kerrigan, and I think it's a lot like that. That's kind of what Kerrigan was good at. So
Right.
I think he's just like an incredible, strong side, edge type of player, which I think when they already have Azeez Ojulari on the other side, I think it's like a pretty good mix of talents that they could really use up front on the edge.
Yeah, Karlaftis' size. I mean, you want bend, you want flexibility no matter what. But you're looking at somebody that's like, well, they've got a compensation strategy here if they're not the most super agile guy in the NFL.
Exactly. Like he has his other ways to win, so it's not as bad that he doesn't have that.
I'm guessing Todd Singer is a Purdue Boilermaker. Boiler up, Todd. Boiler up. By the end, this is going to be nothing but a Rodgers podcast, so enjoy it while it lasts. Getting back to Karlaftis one more time, I think a lot of people are talking Thibodeau versus Hutchinson, And while I think they're 1-2, when we were talking about it, a lot of times it's like 1, 2, 3. We kind of keep Karlaftis kind of close to the same tier with those guys.
I mean, personally, I still think Karlaftis is actually better than Hutchinson. I'm lower on Hutchinson than a lot of other people, but like, right. I just think athletically what Karlaftis has almost as much potential as Thibodeau. Like, I just think to be able to explode and be flexible at his size, and he has like that lateral quickness too. Like, I just think he's an absolutely insane 270-pound athlete. And I think if he can just be a little bit more confident in his pass rush plan at times, like, I think it's going to be all the way there. And like the last thing I'll say about him is when he got to Purdue as a freshman, horrible run defender. Like he just didn't know what was going on, which makes sense. You're a freshman. You don't know what's going on. Athletically, sometimes he would make a play, but like he didn't know what was happening. By the time his junior year came around, he's one of the best run defenders in the class in terms of, seeing stuff in, not chasing eye candy, his technique. Like the fact that he can make that development speaks to me like, oh, he can actually just keep getting better at everything, I think.
He wasn't just a freshman. He was a freshman born in Athens.
Yep.
Greece, not Georgia. He did not commit to Georgia. Was on the water polo team, the youth water polo team, until he was 12 or 13 years old. He talked to us in Indy. And when you train for water polo, one of your training requirements is you have to tread water with your feet while holding a chair over your head for like 10 minutes at a time. And this is 12-year-olds.
Yes.
12-year-olds. I was proud when my 12-year-olds completed lifeguard exams where they treaded water for 2 minutes with their hands and legs. And of course, if you fail, you either get hit in the head with a chair or you drown or both. So that's the kind of athlete Karlaftis was as a youth. Comes to America, picks up football late. So naturally, as a freshman at Purdue, as a 270-pound all-purpose athlete, he might have been a little clueless in terms of what he was doing, what he was seeing from Big Ten offenses.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, Travis Jones was a guy I really liked down in Mobile at the scouting combine. But am I seeing this right? Are you giving the Giants a bunch of hog mollies, Derrik?
That's what they do. And even if, Gettleman's not calling the shots anymore, I feel like the irony is that, that's all that Gettleman did, but then he's leaving, and they really still need to stock up at all those positions. I think he just kind of missed a lot of the times, or they just have guys who their deals are expiring and that sort of thing. But Travis Jones, I mean, you watch him on film, and I think he does a really good job of handling space, whether that's against double teams or single teams. If he's getting, down blocked or something, he can pretty much just take it on immediately, and he's not going to lose his ground. He's fairly explosive on film for a guy his size. He has really long arms that I think help him control blocks and that sort of thing. My issue with him was just I think he can, be a little bit up and down in terms of what he's seeing. Sometimes he doesn't know he's getting down blocked. Sometimes he doesn't know he's getting double teamed, and his anchor will get a little bit, out of whack because he just isn't ready for it. But I think if you can, hone him in at least just a little bit, I think he has all the athletic tools. You saw him on film, but then he backed them all up in Indianapolis, which I think was fantastic. I mean, shoot, if Jordan Davis and Devonta Wyatt didn't look like absolute freak men, Travis Jones would have been the talk of the combine because he blew it up. He just wasn't quite, the all-world athlete that Jordan Davis is. So I don't know. I think, Travis Jones kind of has everything. And then to your point, he looked good in Mobile too. At this point, he's just kind of checked off every box. So
it's kind of the same thing happened in Mobile where Perion Winfrey was blowing up everything in sight. And Jones had a really good Mobile Senior Bowl, but it's you're going to talk about this more dynamic guy who's picking up sacks in practices and things like that. And I also see now there's Channing Tindall. Would that be the 5th best, 6th best, 7th best guy on the Georgia line? And you are mocking him to the Giants here. Now defend yourself, Dave Gettleman Jr.
Yeah, I mean, so Tyndall is actually a linebacker, but I mean, they don't have linebacker talent. I think at this point, their best linebacker on the roster is going to be Benarjic McKinney or Blake Martinez. And I know Blake Martinez looked better in 2020, but that kind of took a step back again in 2021. And I think you clearly saw the biggest issue with the Giants linebacker core is they do not have speed. What does Channing Tindall bring? Speed. That is the one thing we know this dude is good at. He's going to fly sideline to sideline, downhill. He's going to bring it. He's going to be there first. Whether or not he's always where he needs to be is going to be the question. I think his year one could look a little bit rough just in terms of how consistently he sees in run concepts, how much you can actually do with him in coverage, just in terms of, how comfortable is he moving around? How comfortable is he, matching routes and stuff like that? But athletically, they need an upgrade at the position, and Tindall very clearly, passes the test there.
So I got mixed up. It wasn't the 5th or 6th best defensive lineman. It was
their 3rd best linebacker.
Yeah, the 3rd best linebacker. Do you don't anticipate Quay will be on the board at this point? Is that what you're saying?
It's possible that they both could be. I just think that it's probably more likely Tindall is still on the board at this point. It seems like Quay Walker could even sniff the top 50. So yeah, I think it's just more likely Tindall is here. If Walker's there, they should just take him instead. But I worry if he's going to be there.
Okay, there was a question asking whether Kyle Hamilton could be an option. Mike Kurtz asked, any chance that the Giants pick Kyle Hamilton? There's just too many other pressing needs. What do you think, Derrik?
I think there's probably too many other needs. I mean, I would say, though, getting him and McKinney in the same safety room would be incredible because I really liked Xavier McKinney coming out, and I thought he played really, really well in 2021. So that would be a disgusting safety duo, but I just have to imagine they're going to try to address offensive line, and I think there's going to be too many options for them to pass up at 5 that, they wouldn't do it.
Two thoughts there.
If he's there at 7, I will say if he's still there at 7 instead of Karlaftis, that would actually make more sense to me.
Yeah. I could see that. Two things. Gettleman would have taken him.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't always just hog mollies. It was just he can play. I don't care about
Right.
position, Saquon, etc. And the other thing is, if the Giants were in a division where teams were going to throw a million passes all the time nonstop against them, I could see them going more towards safety. And I think we know the Cowboys, they do want to throw the ball a lot, but they want to run the ball a lot too. They're shedding wide receivers and holding on to their tight ends as we speak right now. We know the Eagles just want to run the ball a million trillion times. And the Washington, whatever they're called now, they don't have a quarterback. So it would be a higher priority if you're facing Mahomes all the time. I think, to go out and get Hamilton. And I think the team that gets them, if a team gets them in the top 10, it's like, how are we going to keep up with these passing games?
Right. I think that makes perfect sense.
Joey Sucks has a question for you, Derek. We're gonna put you on the spot here. I've not read the question, but I trust Joey. If you were mocking this and the team was still run by Judge and Gettleman, would you mock them making bad decisions?
To a degree, probably. I mean, you don't want to do anything too insane, but I think you always have to realize the possibility that, at 7, they might just, I don't know, that maybe they would be the ones that come up and take Trevor Penning at 7, which nobody should be doing.
Right.
But if anybody was going to do it, it probably could have been Gettleman. So, you think about it a little bit, but I don't, not every pick is going to be terrible. Sometimes they hit, but you do have to bake it in a little bit.
Yeah, Joey doesn't ask me because he knows when I mock draft, it's like, oh, this is maybe a chance to do a joke, so I'll put a joke in there. But you're right, you don't do it too ridiculously. I think what you look at when you're mocking or when you're trying to really analyze this is the history of the GMs in question. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, Howie Roseman is not taking a linebacker. So if I mock a linebacker to the Eagles, I kind of make it, well, this is not going to happen, but let's talk about it anyway. I think we know the Buffalo Bills, they don't take running backs in the first round. They're on board with the analytics on that, etc. You knew Dave Gettleman was going to have like a keep it simple, give me a trench guy thing. And Penning was perfect. Penning was absolutely perfect. Although I think one of the guys on my mock draft is also going to be perfect because all people would talk about with Penning is how he's just mauling people in every drill, every practice. And like that would excite Dave Gettleman to a high degree. And Joe Judge would be like, great. Like, oh, he can fight our offensive line coaches. Our offensive line coaches can fight each other and winner gets Penning. And he would love that. But keep your eye on Penning to the Panthers, folks, is what we're saying here. Adam Schefter is reporting that Denver has traded for Russell Westbrook. Thank you. I'm not confused enough right now. Let's get to a question that makes sense. Derek, is this a deeper safety class or an offensive line class?
Truthfully, I haven't seen enough of the offensive linemen to know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the safety class, at least for those day 2, day 3, or day 2 guys, there's going to be a lot of them. Jalen Petrie still might fall to day 2. Lewis Sidney could still end up in day 2. I think the only clear day 1 safety is going to be Hamilton. But I think day 2, you're going to get Brisker could still fall. I think day 2, there's going to be options there for safety. So I think it's a pretty good class for that.
It's also tricky. It's 5 positions versus 2.
Right.
Really. It's like I think all safeties against left tackles or something like that, maybe safeties win. But there's a lot of interior line talent here. So I would probably lean towards saying there's more offensive line. Give me Marcus Hayes in a nutshell.
Truthfully, I haven't watched too much of Marcus Hayes. At this point, it was just I know that the Giants very badly need offensive line help, and they still need guard help. Right. I think they're even losing a couple of the ones that they had. I think Will Hernandez is up for a deal. So
yes,
even if Will Hernandez is back, truthfully, Shane Lemieux or whoever the hell was starting there is not going to be starting next year or shouldn't be starting next year. So getting in a guy like Hayes, who I think you can hopefully plug in a guard immediately, they really need something like that.
Excellent. And I agree. In fact, we're going to switch over to my attempt to fix the franchise for the New York Giants. And I went for interior line help early. At least I think I did. And that's why I'm waiting for the graphic to come up so I can, there it is. So I can be sure that I picked who I remember picking. And we just mentioned Jalen Petrie a moment ago, but I started out 1-2 punch with 2 offensive linemen. And what I used a mock draft simulator to try and keep myself honest a little bit. One of the ones that's available on the internet. And on my mock draft simulator, Icky was gone. Evan Neal was gone. So the computer decided they went in the first 4, very likely. So I went with Charles Cross. right off the bat. And I think you can't go wrong with any of these three tackles. And the guy I keep coming back to, I mocked him at Football Outsiders and walked through a couple weeks ago. Absolutely love him. Tyler Linderbaum, center for Iowa. And you might quibble with 7th overall, Derek. You're not quibbling with the player, right?
Not at all. I mean, the only reason I would quibble with him at 7 is not really because I don't think he should go there. I just think that like he won't. But like if they took him there, like I don't know, he's going to be one of the top 10 players in the class, just in terms of like how good he is. I don't want to do positional value, all that jazz, but like as a player, he's a top 10 prospect. So taking him at 7, like especially when they need interior help as badly as they do, I don't see why not. It's hard to find centers who move like that.
Yeah, and I feel it's like best player available. He might be.
Yeah, exactly.
Position of need, it's a critical need position. And so when you put all of those things together, I think that's a good move. Now, no center has been drafted this high. You go back to guys like Marquise Pouncey, who was a huge prospect. I think he was 13th overall. Usually, you don't see a center 13th, 14th, 15th, and that goes back to the merger. And there's complex reasons for that. But I think one thing before I continue, we have to say that very much a possibility the Giants could be one of the teams that trades down in this draft as well.
I think especially when they have both picks like this, like they're probably just hoping they at least get one of their tackles at 5 or 7 or whatever. And then after that, they can just bail and just, get what they can.
Right. And the way things are looking now, I wouldn't trade 7th and then try to get next year's pick unless people are throwing boatloads at you. But this is one of those teams that are in bad cap shape. They know Sheen and and Dayball know they've got like a 2-year leash here in terms of rebuild. This is the kind of team to say we can actually push the assets back another year if we don't like who we see. I wouldn't do that if Tyler Lindenbaum's on it. Like get him and have an anchor in your offensive line for a couple of years. But it's one of the things that this team will consider.
Now, I think especially like, I don't think they picked up Jones's option. So I think especially if they're trying to push back assets, see what they can get for a quarterback next year potentially, makes even more sense.
Absolutely. And that would be the thing. Hey, get a bite of the apple in 2023 if you're not sold with Daniel Jones. And you should not be sold with Daniel Jones by any means. Now, Petrie is another one of these super active fly around safeties that I absolutely love. And I don't necessarily think of it as a position of need. We talked about Kyle Hamilton. What do you think Jalen Petrie and McKinney in the same defensive back room would look like, Derek?
I think it could be awesome because, like, truthfully, McKinney is, well, to me, McKinney can play everything. I think he's just an incredibly sharp player, but like they played him a lot as, that center fielder type role last year.
Right.
And I think he did really good there. Whereas I think Petrie is going to be more of a guy who you want to roll down. You want him in the box a little bit. You want him kind of playing linebacker because that dude is, like you said, he has a nose for the ball and he is not afraid to come up and, hit dudes at the line of scrimmage, fight against blocks. Like he does not play small at all. He plays like a legit linebacker from the safety position.
He plays big and he plays downhill, right?
Exactly. And it's not even like I don't know, like DJ Swearinger, where it's like he only does this because he has to. No, he has range and coverage and all that stuff. And he's actually like a pretty tempered coverage guy. It's just that when he gets into the box, he's just a goblin, man. Like he just gets after it.
Yeah, I was happy in the mock simulator I used that he fell to 37. And like, here's a guy who can cover Dalton Schultz.
Yes.
Or Blake Jarwin. Here's a guy who could chase Jalen Hurts on the option to the outside or get up into the box on a running play. And again, if Washington never comes with an offense, he might be able to be useful against that as well. So at 69, Jalen Whittemere. And my thought here was, first of all, again, they got rid of Rudolph. Evan Ingram, I'm assuming, is going to go bye-bye. I think that it's the time has come for this.
Right. It's kind of run its course.
Right. And here is a tight end who can see the field right away because he blocks pretty well. So you get a guy who can come in, maybe help with the pass protection a little bit, maybe help in the run game. And even if he is sort of a a TE2 to start out his career, he's a useful one who is going to be able to check a lot of boxes and again, maybe help that pass protection a little bit.
Right. Like he should be able to come in and give you that. I think he's a guy who, like, at least to me, is a little more like quicker than fast. I don't think he has like true blazing speed where he's going to be a game changer, but I think if you have enough of that quicker than fast thing, and I think when your hands are, I think he has pretty good hands, especially like when it comes to contested stuff. So like he's going to give you enough in the passing game that I think, like you said, he can be a tight end 2 right away. And then hopefully, by that, average, tight ends take a long time to develop. If you can get him to by year 3, he can probably, be a starting tight end type.
Right. And reliable hands going to make a big difference after a couple of years of Evan Ingram out there. One thing I noticed on the draft simulator, the tight end talent was everywhere. And this is a very, very deep tight end class. There were a lot of big names. The kid from UCLA was still on the board. Ferguson from Wisconsin was still on the board. Jelani Woods obviously was still on the board. He's probably going to be a day 3 guy, even though he blew it up at the combine. And, what I didn't want to do with the Giants is just hand them, hey, here's another like vertical. Maybe he's your extra wide receiver 3, but he's big. Give you a natural tight end in this offense that gives you a couple of options when you're in New York Giants.
Exactly. I think that's exactly what they need.
Right. And then third round, it's like there's going to be edge rusher talent. And I kind of looked through and like Sanders is somebody who, again, he's in that second tier of edge rushers, but he's going to fill a need for the New York Giants.
Definitely fills a need. I mean, they need an edge rusher. Sanders is just, when you watch him on film, it's weird because the Cincinnati defense asked him to play like on the tackle, like head up a lot of the time, but he was playing at like 240, 245. So those are not real like NFL reps for him. You're never going to play him there in the NFL. He's more of a guy who should be, in 6 techs or whatever, out in a wide 9, like that sort of deal. So the fact that he was playing head up makes his tape a little weird, but when you watch him on tape, he has like pretty good explosion. His bend is pretty decent, I think. There's a little bit more to his hands than like it looks like initially. So, I mean, the biggest issue to me is just he's not going to hold up as a run defender probably. He's not going to be able to win through you. But I don't know. There's enough there that by the time the third round comes around and it fills a need, it's pretty decent.
Well, the Russell Westbrook news that we heard earlier, I had a feeling that was somebody using auto type or maybe typing too quickly. I was wondering, is Russell Wilson news actually breaking while we're here talking about Jalen Whittemere? And thank you, Football Outsiders team. Russell Wilson traded to the Denver Broncos, and Mike Williams resigned with the Chargers. Guys, there's one of these things is not like the other. Thank you for giving us all the information. I appreciate that, but can we stick to the lead here? Did the Broncos trade for Russell Wilson? This seems like a thing that is happening imminently.
It's not even, did they even announce what they have given up? I mean, it's probably, you know what, they probably haven't, and it's probably going to be every pick that Denver has.
What did you give up, Thanos? Everything.
Exactly right.
Drew Lock was apparently included in the trade. This is all happening as we speak right now. And Derek, we don't have enough information to really comment upon this, do we?
I don't think so. The best I can say is that, you know what, the AFC West was the quarterback's arms race, and that with Aaron Rodgers now being out of it, this is as best as Denver was going to do.
And this seems to be, I mean, I was talking to Broncos, media. I was talking to some other people who are connected to the Broncos. They were really on top of Aaron Rodgers. This is a sudden left turn. I did not hear Russell Wilson to the Broncos. I heard other rumors involving all of those pieces, but not the joining of them at all in Indianapolis. So,
yeah, I don't know. It's just a very, I don't even really know what to say. I mean, I'm excited to, give it a little bit more brain thought after this.
I am excited too, and I am excited to talk about tomorrow with Aaron Schatz on our podcast, and probably again on Thursday with Aaron Schatz on our podcast. But I do know one thing that I can say, and that is Football Outsiders NFL Draft coverage is presented by Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code FO40, that's FO40, at Underdog to double your deposit up to $100. And keep your eyes peeled for new best ball tournaments that include 2022 rookies and their new Superflex games, where you can deploy your knowledge from mine and Derrik Klassen's NFL draft research and analysis. So links to Underdog Fantasy can be found in the description of this video below. So go play with us on Underdog today. That is it. We're going to go figure out what the heck is actually going on. Until next Tuesday, you can find Derrik Klassen and I back here next Tuesday. Derek, what is this week's film room going to be about?
It is going to be about Iowa State running back Breece Hall.
Breece Hall, he blew up the combine.
He did. He ran faster than he looks on film. That is the preview I'll give, is that he ran faster than he looks.
Faster and more athletic than on film, and I can't wait to read it. You'll see Derrik Klassen talking about Breece Hall from Iowa State on Film Room at Football Outsiders. You'll probably be seeing me have a nervous breakdown about Russell Wilson to the Broncos when I write about the Broncos in 2 days at Football Outsiders. Until then, take care and enjoy the rest of your week.